We wanted to talk to you today about a topic that is near and dear to our hearts, which is the mindsets and practices of excellent CEOs. So my name is John Parsons. I'm a senior partner with McKinsey.
And my name is Johanne Lavoie, and I'm a partner and master expert in our organization practice.
So why are we talking about CEOs? Well, we know that the role of the CEO is incredibly important, and increasingly so, right? As time goes on, it's getting even more important. But what's interesting is when our colleagues did the research for this book, CEO Excellence, they found that 68% of CEOs actually didn't feel like they were prepared for the role when they got there. Now, we know that it's really important when you get it right. The top quintile performers actually contribute 30 times more value to shareholders than the rest of the CEOs when you look at the top 2,000. That's equivalent to about $5 trillion worth of additional value, which is equivalent to the GDP of Japan. So pretty important to get it right.
So to find out, what could we understand and what could we learn from the best performing CEO, we went about to find the best performing CEOs, and we went through a rigorous process a la McKinsey to narrow it down through a series of criteria to the top 200 about CEOs that we looked into. And then we sent invitation and ended up interviewing 67 CEOs for about 2 to 3 hours, so very in-depth interviews. And what was powerful about doing it this way is that what surfaced is the stories of what these CEOs were cultivating as a practice and what were some of the mindsets, their paradigms, their ways of thinking, their priorities. And what I find interesting about this is when you look at what came out, which we'll show you, is that we can all learn from it. We can all play with what would I do differently in my current job if I practice some of these mindsets. And that's our invitation as you listen to these. So what were the 6? And the 6 sets of mindset are organized around the core responsibilities of CEOs. One is set the direction. We'll come back to it. Align the organization. Mobilize through your leaders and your leadership team. Engage your board. Engage all stakeholders and connect. And then finally, last but not least, manage your personal effectiveness and your own energy. So let's just start with the first one.
Sure. So let's start with set direction. The mindset that we found that was most successful was really around being bold. Now, what does that mean to be bold? It's easy to say, but it's really about when you think about the strategy, when you think about the vision, how you're allocating resources in the organization, really thinking what's gonna get people to notice, what is something that we can't do that's gonna really make a difference. What we found was, one example that's included in the book that's referenced is Ed Breen, who was the CEO of DuPont. Back a few years ago, he had the idea, he was looking forward, his organization, at the trends in the agriculture space and realized that there was a great opportunity if they could cooperate and work together with Dow. Now, if anyone knows, Dow and DuPont were, competitors. They didn't get along historically. And it was, considered extremely bold to be able to negotiate and actually come together for a friendly merger. Ultimately, what they did was they combined the two companies and then established 3 separate operating companies. So they basically merged and then broke apart. And what came out as a new organization was Corteva, which is an agri-science business, and it was propelled into the number 2 in the industry and has been quite successful.
So when you think about these significant change, if we change the strategy so boldly, how do you mobilize the organization into changing the ways we work? And what we found is the best CEOs put equal emphasis on vision and strategy as they put on the people and the ways of working. So one great example is Aon United. I say Aon United because they became such a catchphrase for Greg Case, who really wanted to transform the way this insurance company was thinking about customer back and solving their clients, and I should say clients, toughest challenge versus selling them products, an insurance product. And one of the shift he wanted to bring in the organization was the shift around one Aon United. Now, there's a bunch of stuff that they did around organization structure, et cetera, talent. But the big, bold move that they made in mobilizing the organization around One Aon United was to roll out a very intense and deep experiential learning for the leaders to go through an experience where they would experience what Aon United really meant. And they rolled it out to 8,000 leaders over 6 months in 8 different languages and trained almost 100 facilitators to be able to actually deploy this, to bring the leaders who were client-facing into that experience. What does that mean for me to shift my own ways of thinking and be successful in this way? So I thought that was pretty cool.
And that's a great segue to the next one, which is mobilize through leaders.
And the mobilizing through leaders, I love this phrase of how do I scale myself through my team as a CEO? And the reality is team performance at the top is the number one non-financial predictor of performance and what investors look at. And yet most senior executive teams, most teams, have struggled. And so what we found from the best CEOs is they really take their team very seriously. And they look at how do I create a true leadership team versus a team of leaders that is very clear on only the work that we can do as a team. And the beauty of that is that when you spend a lot of time really thinking about what's the work we can only do as a leadership team, is the outcome is you're also solving your empowerment challenge because the rest needs to be empowered. So this investment into creating the conditions for really the A team to emerge, there's a lot of emphasis that the best CEOs will put on that dimensions.
Great.
Now, should we move to stakeholders?
Yes.
Move to stakeholders.
Yeah, and then we'll come back to the board because I think the board's a subset of is an important stakeholder. But what we've also found is that a really important role of the CEO is how you engage with stakeholders, and we're increasingly the world's getting more complex, right? And you have to be in tune with some of the societal impacts and what matters to society, and really understanding who your stakeholders are, and then. In moments of truth, there's been a lot of crisis lately, and in moments of truth, how you show up and how you actually deal with it has become incredibly important. There's one quote in the book which I really like. I think it came from Warren Buffett, which was, in moments of crisis, you have to get it right, you got to get it fast, you got to get it out, and you got to get it over. And so that's good advice for CEOs when dealing with important moments in time. Do you want to come back to the board?
Yeah, so engaging our board. And it's interesting because the old mindset traditional is you manage the board. The best CEOs don't manage the board. They use their board as the cheapest, highest skilled consulting support that they have, and they engage their board accordingly. And one of the reality is that the world is evolving faster than our capacity to catch up. And that's true for board member. So the best CEO educate their boards, right? So in advance of a big strategy offsite with the board, for example, offer education session. And, one of my clients did that and just offered some education session for the board. 100% of the board member took 100% of the sessions. So this idea of how do I partner with my board and how do I think much more strategically about engaging and helping shape the board to help the company is becoming very top priority for the best CEO. And then I think we're done with the personal effectiveness. So managing personal effectiveness, boy, that's a big one, right? The role of the CEO is a 24/7 job, and it's a hard one. And especially today in the context of just increasing pace of change, volatility, unpredictability, the demand on the individual is huge. So what we found is the best CEO do take it seriously, and they do manage their time, but not only their time, their energy very mindfully, and their renewal to be able to be at their best and show up at their best with their team and have access to that intuitive power. One of the example that I love is from Brad Smith, who talks about the crystal ball. And the crystal ball for him is, he says, I juggle a lot of balls all the time. And one of the balls, some of these balls are rubber balls. I can drop them and it's okay, and they'll bounce back. But some are crystal balls, and these, I can't drop them. And a lot of these crystal balls are commitments that he made to his family or his friends or himself. And those are crystal balls. And I love that way of kind of framing what are my priorities that I need to take care of.
Great. So I think that really covers the six elements. I think our advice to any aspiring CEOs, obviously these are great insights and great advice for CEOs, but I think for aspiring CEOs, now's the time to practice, right? So no matter what leadership role you're in, you can apply these behaviors, you can apply these mindsets, and you can start to learn and really treat your role
and
as a
And
playground.
I would say even if you're not aspiring to be a CEO, but you're just an executive wanting to, aspiring to lead at your best, what I find really interesting is how can I use my current role as a playground for development, for practice? And a nice thing to do is simply, what would I do differently from these mindsets? And use the mindset in order to use my current playground as my best one for becoming who I am more fully.